Hey guys, welcome back to Clownfish TV. This is Kneon. I am here with Geeky Sparkles.
Hello.
And we're going to talk about Doctor Who. If you had any hope for Russell T Davies to turn Doctor Who around, just abandon that hope altogether. We did a video before talking about how he was not going to undo the retcon to the Doctor's origin in The Timeless Children because he's friends with Chris Chibnall, and now he's making big changes to Davros, to the leader of the Daleks. Apparently, Davros is problematic because he's in a wheelchair and he's a bad guy.
I never saw him as like being a disabled person. I just thought he was like part Dalek, part human, and so that's how they merged the two.
Yeah, I never viewed him as being a bad guy in a wheelchair. I just figured because
he's riding around the car.
He's in his little Dalek mobile. Like, the thing with the Daleks is, for those of you who don't watch Doctor Who, they are mutants. They're not robots. They're actually mutants inside of these like robotic tanks. And it just made sense for the leader, the creator of the Daleks, to also be riding around in a robotic tank. Mm-hmm. But they're just going to turn him into just some random guy. And this is Russell T Davies' idea. And
because we don't want to offend people in wheelchairs.
We don't want to offend people.
Who mostly weren't offended in the first place.
There are people in the comments that are saying we were not offended.
Because I mean, if you look at this and think that it's just a person in a wheelchair bad, disabled person is evil. One, what the hell's wrong with you? Why would you? I was kind of like, that sounds like a you problem. This is like orcs are all black people. I'm like, this is a you problem.
So let's talk about this, because this is not going to sit well. This is not going to sit well because Davros is one of the top Doctor Who villains of all time, and to make such a fundamental change to him for the sake of political correctness is not going to play very well. So before we get into it any further, please subscribe for more pop culture news, views, and rants. Guys, you get a woohoo if you do.
Woohoo!
Go out to shopclownfish.com, snag a copy of Shadowbinders Volume 3 hardcover, first new Shadowbinders content in 10 years, not shipping until next summer. You can also pick up books 1 and 2 as well, limited quantities of those, and thank you so much for the support. So yeah, this is Russell T Davies did a whole spiel on changing Davros because he talks about how it's not current year enough. They had to take a look at Doctor Who.
Selling point.
Yeah. They had to take a look at it because he didn't want to associate disability with evil. Davies said in this video, and you can go out and find the clip. I don't know if I'll get struck by playing that clip or not, but he said, we had a long conversation about bringing Davros back because he's a fantastic character, but time and society and culture and taste has moved on. And there's a problem with the Davros of old in that he's a wheelchair user who is evil.
Well, why don't we stop with the Cybermen then? Because there are people who have cybernetic, appendages because they lost their arms and legs, and that just basically makes you turning into a Cyberman. Cybermen are evil too.
Well, it's funny you should mention that.
I was kidding, for real?
So Lumic is a creation of Russell T Davies, and he was an evil guy in a wheelchair who was in charge of Cybermen.
I literally, because I have a headache, I had my eyes closed. I wasn't looking at the screen, so I didn't even see you pull that up. I didn't even know. I was just joking. Okay, now, I didn't know it was a Cyberman thing.
Yes. So they're like, oh, hey, yeah, so you created Lumic with the Cybermen, and he was a bad guy in a wheelchair. Now you're going to turn around and tell us.
Like, some people have like, hands or like legs, limbs that are like, they're getting more and more progressive and advanced, that they're basically like cybernetics, and they do all kinds of, they can even read your brain waves and activate. And I'm like, well, wouldn't that be like, how can you do that? Because you're insulting people that might have those if you have Cybermen in your show. I mean, this is stupid. Where does the line get drawn?
Yeah. Well, he went on this big rant about it. Again, I would run the clip. I'm just afraid that they're going to ding me for it, especially if you say mean things about their show, which we're not. We're just saying this is overkill.
That's him.
This is new Davros. Yes, it's just a guy.
So it's Grand Moff Tarkin.
He's Grand Moff Tarkin now. Yes, he's like a Nazi now. So yeah, Russell said I had problems with that. A lot of us on the production team had problems with that. Associating disability with evil. Again, this is a guy who created an evil wheelchair user himself.
I agree that, you shouldn't be associating those with their disabilities with being evil. Just like you shouldn't be making the fat people always like, gluttonous and stupid. But, here we are. And I agree with that to a point. But the thing is, I never looked at him and thought it was a disabled wheelchair user abuser and that you're making fun of disabled people. I never
got
that. Was not
that
a character I got that from. I just thought he'd run around in a little Dalek car.
Yeah, I thought he was like riding around his Dalek mobile. I didn't think that was like, I never.
Was old, couldn't walk right.
Yes, and he's also sort of like transitioning between human and Dalek. He's also got a third eye in his forehead. So I don't know if they're going to go back in time to before he was in the Dalek mobile or what's going on.
How dare they? Because now they're making fun of people with physical deformities and extra nipples or appendages or whatever, toes, because he has a third eye.
Well,
clearly that's what the intention was.
He was kind of blind too. Like he had the third eye, but his actual eyes had atrophied.
Well, isn't he bald?
Yes.
Well, he's making fun of people with alopecia. How dare they? How dare you? Is the new guy bald too?
Not very. No.
Oh, okay, so he's making hey, people those with hair loss are evil.
Yeah, so I'm
offended. I don't have hair loss, but I'm offended for those that do.
So this guy's he's just a dude. They turned Davros into just a dude. Now they had him as a kid before in Peter Capaldi's, and he had a moral dilemma like, do I save this kid knowing he grows up to be Davros or what, But yeah, they said they made the choice to bring him back without the facial scarring and without the wheelchair or his support unit, which functions as a wheelchair.
Why? Because facial scarring, if you have scars that you might be associated with evil, and people that have scars are going to be offended. I have a scar on my forehead. I am personally not offended that Davros had facial scars, as I too have one.
But this is what got me. This is what he said that really got me. Okay. Because this is a guy, again, who brought Doctor Who back like 15, 16 years ago, whatever, and actually created a character, an evil character in an actual wheelchair, not a
Dalek.
Not a Dalek.
Just a person that's just evil because they're in a wheelchair. Anyway.
He said, this is how we see Davros now. This is what he looks like. This is 2023. This is our lens. This is our eye.
This is your audience not watching your show.
This is your audience disappearing. Things used to be black and white. They're not in black and white anymore. And Davros used to look like that. And he looks like this now. And that we're absolutely standing by.
But wait. Things were never black. It was never okay to say disabled people were evil. So there's the saying that was black and white. So it was black and back then. It was black and white that if you were a disabled person, you're evil. No, because it wasn't intended to be a disabled person. That's evil. That was not the intent. If you're going to black and white, the intent matters. That was never the intent. If you interpreted it that way, that's a you problem.
I just can't believe we're living in a world now where.
In a world where people can't discern, making fun of somebody and not.
Okay, so we're gonna get to the comments here, and there some people are like, "Hey, I'm thankful that you're thinking about accessibility." Some people are like, "I'm thankful you're thinking about accessibility," but Davros is Davros,
right? Davros isn't a dude in a wheelchair.
Well, okay, so what about Darth? Yeah, you said about robotic limbs. What about Darth Vader? His arms and legs are mechanical.
He's evil though. So it's another disabled person that's evil.
It's another disabled person that's evil.
But Luke was missing a hand, and his hand's mechanical, and he was good. Until they ruined him. But, he was good. He was disabled. I mean, I'm just like, I'll say otherly able, because I don't think a lot of times they even like the term disabled. It's like, but I'm just like...
Okay, Davros can kick most people's asses, because he's got to... He's tooling around. I never viewed him as a guy in a wheelchair. I viewed him as a guy in a Dalek mobile.
Do you ever want to just bang your head off a wall? That's how I feel right now. I just
every
want to
day.
bang my head off a wall.
Every damn day of my life.
I mean, at what point is there no villain can be anything? Because we're going back to a villain is us, because you can't have your classic villains because it offends somebody. So it's going to be that the villains are man again, which is what killed you the first season of, the female Doctor Who. And it's like you're going to go back into the same thing because you can't make villains because somebody's going to feel that's representative of them and be mad.
I hear somebody that said, I'm disabled. I don't like it. That's just part of Davros, and I accepted it. And I don't feel like I ever felt they were framing disabled people as evil. Just him. It just feels unnecessary. This Hamish Steele is actually the showrunner of, oh my God, I think the Paranormal Park cartoon, I'm pretty sure, but said always felt it was worse that they did again with John Lumick. Again, this is a character that Russell T Davies created, and doubt we'll be seeing him again, it conveniently reinvents the character for a new generation. Nobody needs to reinvent the character. I mean, this is the thing. He's a bad guy in a Dalek mobile. He is an iconic character. He is one of the most iconic Doctor Who villains of all time, and now he's just some dude. Some dude in a Nazi uniform.
I'm disabled and a wheelchair user, and personally, it's never bothered me, nor have I ever thought this before. But I'm glad Russell T Davies is open to these kind of things, willing to make changes. Look, I think that if people were legitimately, associating disability with evil, then I would say, yeah, I get it. But they were not actively thinking Davros was because he was in a wheelchair made him evil. They just like, oh, it's an evil dude in a wheelchair. You know, I gotta tell you, I am 100% sure there are people who are shitty people that are in wheelchairs. I'm sure, statistically speaking, there are some shitty people in wheelchairs.
It's almost like people in wheelchairs are actual people with actual personalities, different personalities.
Their disability isn't their identity.
Yeah,
That's a person who happens to be in a wheelchair, not just a disabled person. That's not their whole being. That they actually have a personality outside of being in a wheelchair. What a concept.
Yeah, this person said, as a disabled person, I have concerns about disabled people being seen only as ethically good in media. I want to have disabled heroes as much as I want disabled villains.
Right.
It's all about balance to me, and Davros should not be changed. It's offensive that his wheelchair has gone. I never viewed it as a wheelchair. I was just like, he's like a space Nazi in a Dalek mobile.
Yeah, I mean, he was like, because the Daleks are like a tank, and he was just in half of a tank.
So now, so now you're saying people in wheelchairs aren't smart enough to create the Daleks.
There you go. I'm just like, the whole idea that just because you're in a wheelchair makes you automatically good, or if you're in a wheelchair makes you automatically evil, is just so ludicrously stupid that I can't even verbalize how dumb this is. I mean, if people legitimately were seeing that as if someone is disabled as evil, and that's how they were viewing Davros, I would be 100% on board. I'd be like, yeah, because you don't want to associate that. I mean, that's not fair. But that's not how people were viewing it. They were viewing Davros as Davros. They weren't like, oh, Davros is evil because he's in a wheelchair. I guarantee you no one was thinking Davros is evil because he's in a wheelchair.
No, he's evil because he's an asshole.
I know. And the whole idea that just because every disabled person ever is completely good and would never be evil is ridiculous too. It's like every ginger ever is all good, guys. And there's no evil gingers. Ever. We're all good. You can't offend, and we're not black.
Yeah, now it was on children in need, so I mean they're dealing with kids that are special needs and stuff. So I mean that's probably
maybe there's a kid out there who wants to be the villain.
Maybe
there's a lot of kids who like the villains more than they like the heroes.
I identified more with Lex Luthor as a kid than I did Superman.
I'm just saying there are a lot of kids
he was funnier
who might have liked Davros because he was in a wheelchair. There are probably kids that dressed up as Davros because they can put the costume on their wheelchair. I'm just saying.
Yeah, there are kids. So yes, there are a lot of times limited options for people to cosplay and to dress up for Halloween, and you see some really creative uses of wheelchairs being incorporated in the costume. Like, hey, it's Luke in his X-wing.
I've seen some. I'm like, I was like, damn, that's awesome.
But so I'm like, but now you just took one away. And I don't know if anybody want to go as Davros, but again, I personally never viewed him as being a dude in a wheelchair. I just viewed him as being the Dalek leader. So of course he's going to have a little scooter like the rest of the Daleks. Because technically all the Daleks are disabled because they're just kind of like mutant blobs that have to have these tanks to ride around in. So technically we can't make the Daleks a thing at all.
Wait. Even more so. Technically they're not humans. They're another race, correct?
They're from Skara, yeah.
Right. So technically,
mutated.
What if you're seeing as a disability, but that's disability to them?
Well,
in their mind, they're not. That's just their normal every day.
Well,
to them, they're not disabled.
Actually, Daleks view themselves as being genetically superior to every other race.
So I mean, by their own idea of themselves, they are not. They are not in any way, shape, or form. Somewhat less, which no one should see themselves as less than anybody else if they have a disability or not. And if you treat people like they're less than you, then you're a fucking asshole, and I'll come and find you and kick your ass. But I'm just saying, for them being from another planet, another world, maybe in their world, I mean, that's normal for them. That's nothing that's...
No, it's totally normal. They want to wipe out the inferior species. So here's the dilemma. When you start, it's called the slippery slope, right? When you start down this path and you're like, oh, Davros is problematic because he's a guy in a whatever. And then you start to realize, wait, all the Daleks are technically guys in a wheelchair. They're not robots.
And girls.
And them, they, thems. They're whatever. They're just like, they look like blobs with a really big eye, right? That's what they look like. They cannot walk. They need to have assistance. They need to have their mech suits to get around. And they're also a bunch of genocidal assholes. So now you got a whole problem. You get rid of all the Daleks because they're technically all wheelchair users.
They're genocidal assholes.
And they're genocidal assholes. So it's like,
is it offensive to people who are really blob-like in their body shape? I'm like, this is just ridiculous. I mean, I sincerely understand the thought process, and I don't disagree with the thought process.
I think
about
it's
trying
overkill.
Yes. I think that the heart was in the right place and intent matters, but I think they're just going overboard.
Yeah, I mean, he seems really excited about it, and he even says, we'll get to his crap. I do like Russell T Davies. I do. This is why I'm like, dude,
I wish he would, make
where
more
did
choices.
Russell T Davies go? Because you're not the same Russell T Davies you were 15, 20 years ago. But like, he's saying, I don't blame anybody in the past for portrayals or whatever. I'm like, that includes yourself. Why don't you bring up John Lumet?
That's why he doesn't blame anybody in the past, because he knows he's included in that.
Because now he's enlightened. So I'm just saying, guys, if they're going to nitpick Davros, one of the most iconic Doctor Who villains of all time, and they're going to basically just completely scrap him and start over again, this show is going to probably not be very good.
Adipose were literally made of fat people.
Yes! Adipose were made of fat people, and the Slytherin, which he created, were baby-faced snake people. Then they farted and gassy and
so they're making fun of people who have like eating disorders that might have excessive gas. I'm like, we can do this all day.
What about people that modify their bodies to reflect on the outside how they feel on the inside until they get to the point where they're just a piece of skin stretched too thin on it?
They need moisturized.
They need moisturize. Yes, because actually, she was a he, because she talked about when she was a little boy back in like Texas or something, and then eventually transitioned into a piece of skin. So there are a lot. Look, you can go back to his Doctor Who run, and you can be like, there's a lot of problematic stuff, and everybody does stuff or says stuff or creates stuff that maybe they're not too proud of. But I think in this particular case, this is massive. This is overcorrection. Just be like, you know what? Going forward, we're not going to make any more villains in wheelchairs, but you don't have to go back and change that.
They should just not make any more villains in general, because it's just going to be that some average Joe is the villain. It's always going to be a dude, because, but it's going to be some average person, or back to man as the villain, because you can't make villains, because even if they're from another planet, even if they're different, they might offend somebody.
Yeah, I don't know, guys. I was hoping this would be good, but I think it's going to be more of the same. It actually sounds like they're doubling down on political correctness.
Oh, because that worked so well last time.
It worked so well last time. When they're changing Davros just to be politically correct, I'm like, nah, I'm good. You know what? I don't even know if I want to watch the David Tennant special.
Who are they going to blame this time? People who are against those that are otherly abled. I don't
know. It's just, this is overcorrection. Again, this is what we talk about. Like, just stop. Your heart can be in the right place, but just stop. It gets silly. It gets to a point where it just gets silly. We're going to wrap this up.
Yes.
Please subscribe for more pop culture news, views, and rants, guys. We'll talk later.
Bye.